What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, which is a game that is actually releasing this February. It's currently January, and I'm bringing you this early look via a demo that was just released over on Steam for the prologue, more or less. Primarily because it's a game that I have had my eyes on since I finished the Erdrick trilogy earlier, and given that the demo progress eventually carries over to the full game, it made sense to check it out. But unfortunately, I will say that with this game's release date of February 5th, there are some more pressing concerns I'm going to have to deal with at that time first. But for now, let's first focus on this reimagined version, let's say. So I do think reimagined is probably the appropriate word because remake is probably, I would say, a little off. The reason for that being that they will just tell you straight up over on the store page that they have streamlined and sort of refocused the story a bit, which made sense to me because one of the things I had heard about Dragon Quest VII here is that it was an extremely large and long game. Whereas, from what I understand here, they've actually, as they put it, streamlined the narrative to make it faster, I guess. And this is, of course, going to come with a change in content. And I've already seen, in fact, some people mentioning specifically that there's things that they left out that aren't included here at all. And that is obviously the kind of thing that is going to ruffle some people's feathers and worth knowing going into this. But otherwise, let's talk about the rest of it. So, Dragon Quest VII is not actually related to many of the other games in the series outside of being in the same franchise the way the, say, Erdrick trilogy was. This is a little more standalone than that, which is my understanding for the rest of the series beyond the Erdrick trilogy for the most part. To that end, however, we initially start on a very small isolated island. In fact, the common assumption on the island is that this is the only landmass left for some reason. This is all there is. However, unsurprisingly, our young hero here is having none of that, and you, along with the wayward prince, who is very determined to not sit around a castle all day, are looking for adventure, as the youthful heroes of these games often are, but in particular, you're trying to find something out there, and that comes quicker than you would probably think. Once you stumble upon a statue that points you in the direction of some stone tablets, which then leads you into a shrine of sorts that sees you teleporting to other locations. And this is actually where it gets a bit interesting, because the crux of Dragon Quest VII, apparently, is that rather than being a larger open world to explore, so to speak, rather you move through a series of islands that each tell an individual story that you have to sort out before then eventually weaving it into a grander narrative about what is actually going on here. And the demo at least handles like the first leg of that journey, the new location that you'll be exploring, and then once you get back it sets up a few other things before the demo actually ends. However, the main thing I wanted to talk about here is that the initial sort of introductory story on the new location that you travel to after you get access to the shrine was surprisingly good, if a little fast. I would say things were moving really quickly. And yet, the relatively short story that they told there actually did take some time to set up some characters and hit some plot beats, and it was surprisingly well done for what it was. So much so that just playing through this demo, my first thought was, I'm very curious if these other tiny little stories that are associated with all the other places you'll be traveling could live up to this first one. Because honestly, I was a little surprised by how much I wound up enjoying that. That is ultimately probably a good thing, mind you, because the rest of the game, as you would probably expect with an older title from the original, is actually a bit on the simple side. So combat is basically standard JRPG fare. You're going to have some equipment on the party members you'll be picking up along the way. They each have a vocation. As that vocation levels up, they get access to different skills, and then of course you bring those into combat and act accordingly. My understanding is that eventually you'll be able to level up 2 vocations at once and sort of mix and match them to effectively make what your class is. And that's a system we've certainly seen in plenty of other games that do more or less what this game does, on a gameplay level at the very least. And yet there are still a couple of things to know. Each vocation comes with a special ability. Once you're in combat for a while, your character gets into a worked up state, they call it, and that lets you use the vocational ability, which are more or less like an ultimate that you can trigger. Your main characters just lets you absorb hits completely for a turn. Kiefer, the rambunctious prince, he gets an ability that cuts his defense but increases his attack as an example. But for the most part, it seems like a relatively simple system. However, there are going to be some difficulty options and adjustments you can make if you'd like to customize it further and make this experience as easy or as difficult as you would like to, I suppose, which, given the way that they've apparently streamlined the narrative, is not really much of a shock. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that I was a little iffy on the graphics of this game at first. The way that I had seen the marketing does make it look a little bit weird. However, while it is not a completely sort of fixed camera top-down experience of the original, as the original is a bit on the older side, mind you, the camera is still sort of actually top-down for the most part, and while you can sort of spin it around and move it and get better views on certain things with the sort of diorama-type art style they've got going on here, when you are in that top-down mode, these sort of, I would say, odd-looking character models actually make a little more sense, which is interesting because that's not really a problem you see with JRPGs too often, but it is actually the kind of thing you see in a lot of older CRPGs, which I'm more used to playing. So it was, interesting, I guess, to see that problem in a different genre, at least than the one I am accustomed to seeing it in, which is a very long way of saying I do actually think that in motion the game looks a little better than some of the marketing materials would have had me believe. And so, all told, a bit of an intriguing demo. As I mentioned, I could definitely see this not being the kind of thing that purists would enjoy. Like, they've clearly altered the story here significantly, and I could tell that, and I've never even played the original. And yet, truth be told, I did have a pretty good time with this demo. Seems a little, bare bones as far as the actual mechanics go, but I'd really have to see the sort of dual vocation thing in motion to make a proper judgment on that. But to sort of start wrapping this up, I would say as a demo, it did its job. I am, in fact, intrigued about the rest of the game. The release date remains a bit of a problem for me. It's releasing the same day as Neo 3, and then within a week of that, they've got High on Life 2. Menace Early Access starts on February 5th as well, and so basically there's a lot of reasons that covering this right as it releases would be frustrating. However, having enjoyed this demo for what it was and just simply being interested in playing more of the Dragon Quest series after playing the initial Erdrick trilogy, I'm almost certainly going to get around to this game at some point. It's probably just going to take me a little while. So in the meantime, I think it'll be curious to see how this game lands with the public, because I think it's pretty obvious they're making some controversial changes to an older title, and that's always hit or miss with people. But long story short, I will eventually get around to playing the rest of this, as I am very curious about it at this point. So make of that what you will, I guess. But for today, that's pretty much going to do it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Let me know how you feel about this one down in the comment section below. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.